I sacrificed everything for my boyfriend, yet he fell for that fake heiress. Together, they schemed to frame me and have me imprisoned. But after my rebirth, I realized it was his sworn rival who was truly worthy of my trust and devotion for a lifetime. Chapter 1. I was at my desk handling work when Ethan suddenly called me into his office, his face tight with anger. "Ethan, is there something you need?" Without a word, Ethan threw a file down in front of me. "Mia, all the evidence of you leaking company secrets is right here. Do you have anything to say?" I picked up the file and examined it carefully, my heart racing as I looked up at him. "Ethan, I've never seen this file before. You have to believe me." Yuna, who was standing beside him, looked at me with disdain. "Stop denying it, Mia. Who else would have access to Ethan's office to take these files?" My face went pale. The moment I saw Yuna's smug expression, I knew it was her doing. I pointed directly at Yuna, my voice urgent as I spoke to Ethan. "It was her. She's the one who leaked it." Ethan slapped my hand away, placing himself protectively in front of Yuna. "Mia, even now you're trying to frame Yuna. Do you honestly think I'd believe a word you say?" I wasn't trying to frame her. I accused her because I knew Yuna's intentions with Ethan were anything but pure. It was because I knew what Yuna was really after that I'd been doing everything I could to keep her away from him. But my efforts only seemed to push Ethan further away. Now, he wouldn't believe a single word I said. Yuna peered out from behind him, her face a picture of feigned innocence and hurt. "Mia, I know you don't like me getting close to Ethan, but feelings can't be forced. You can't just betray him because he doesn't like you back. Ethan has treated you so well. How could you do this to him?" Listening to Yuna's accusations, I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. "Yuna, how long do you plan on keeping up this act?" Slap! Before I could finish, Ethan raised his hand and struck me hard across the face. I looked at him, feeling a deep disappointment settle over me. "You're going to take her word for it? Just because she says so, you're convinced I'm guilty?" Chapter 2. "Mia, what right do you have to even compare yourself to Yuna?" Ethan's cold words cut me like a knife. "Ethan, you're going to regret this." His eyes grew darker, filled with resentment, as he looked at me with undisguised hatred. "Knowing you has been the biggest regret of my life. If you hadn't interfered, Yuna and I would have been together a long time ago. We wouldn't have wasted so much time. Yuna wouldn't have had to suffer and endure hardship in the Smith family because of you." I staggered, feeling the sting of his words, even though he didn't know the truth. He hated me for keeping him away from Yuna, never realizing I'd done it for his own good. In his eyes, I was just arrogant and domineering, using my status as a Smith family daughter to bully Yuna. But he had no idea I was the real outsider in the Smith family. When I was 10, the Smith family found me and brought me back, and it was only then that I learned I was their real daughter. Mr. and Mrs. Smith couldn't bear to part with Yuna, who had been with them since infancy, so they kept her in the family. She remained the Smith family's eldest daughter, and I became the second. Even now, I still went by my adoptive parents' surname. I wasn't even worthy of the Zhang name, so what position did I have in the family? How could I possibly bully Yuna? But Ethan never believed me. His eyes saw only Yuna. The next moment, the police burst into the room, cuffing my hands behind my back. I had no strength left to resist. Ethan stood by, watching coldly as I was taken away. "Mia, you can repent in prison." As I was being led out, I couldn't stop myself from turning to warn him. "Yuna is using you, Ethan. She's the one who really wants to hurt you." Ethan's face twisted in disdain. "You think I would doubt Yuna because of anything you say? Stop dreaming. I've already owed her enough because of you. From now on, she's the only one I'll trust." Chapter 3. After being sent to prison by Ethan, I never expected the first person to visit me would be Yuna. "Mia, how does it feel to be in prison?" she taunted. "Yuna, one day, I'll expose your true face to everyone." I shot back. Yuna sneered. You won't get the chance, you probably don't know. She continued. But the Smith family publicly severed ties with you after you were imprisoned. Now, you have no Ethan, and you don't have the Smith family either. What do you have left to fight me with? Because of you, I lost my chance to obtain Novawave's confidential files and almost ruined everything. I clenched my fists in frustration. Yuna, Ethan likes you so much, why are you treating him this way? What good is his affection if I don't like him? She replied coldly, glancing at her nails with a mocking smile. Since you can't stir up any trouble, I'll tell you. I've only ever loved Jack. Getting close to Ethan was merely a way to help him bring down Novawave. I was stunned. I knew Yuna had an agenda, but I didn't realize it was all for Jack Anderson, Ethan's arch nemesis. After flaunting her victory, Yuna prepared to leave. Mia, Ethan has prepared a special gift for you. Don't forget to check it. With that, she left, leaving me in confusion. It wasn't until I returned to my cell that I understood what Yuna meant by the gift. A few tall, imposing women had appeared in my cell. They looked like they meant trouble. Are you Mia? Who are you? It doesn't matter who we are. Just know that someone wants you gone. I turned to run, but someone grabbed my hair and yanked me back. As I was pinned to the ground and beaten, I couldn't believe Ethan was so ruthless. Sending me to prison wasn't enough, he had hired people to finish me off. Just before losing consciousness, I heard a woman's voice. Don't blame us. Blame yourself for crossing the wrong people. Ethan and Yuna are in love. You should have expected this. Chapter 4. I suddenly jolted awake and sat up in bed. The fear and pain from being beaten still lingered, clinging to me. Looking around, I saw that I was in my bedroom at the Zhang house. Wasn't I in prison? I grabbed my phone from beside the pillow and checked it. My heart skipped a beat. I had been reborn a year earlier. After a long period of contemplation, I finally calmed down. Feeling thirsty, I got up to get a glass of water. As I passed by Yuna's room, I noticed her door was slightly ajar, and I could hear faint voices. I remembered it was today in my past life that I had discovered Yuna's ulterior motives for getting close to Ethan. The person she was speaking with must be Jack. I quietly took out my phone and set it to record. Yansheng, trust me, I can get close to Ethan. Once he lets his guard down, I'll help you. It's all because of Mia. She clings to Ethan every day, leaving me no chance. Don't worry, Ethan only likes me. Getting into Novawave is just a matter of time. The room fell silent, and I cautiously left Yuna's room. Looking at the recording on my phone, I realized that I had been given a second chance. This time, I wouldn't let Yuna off. As for Ethan, I had always cared for him, but he never valued me. He even suspected and framed me. This time, I would see how he would fare without my help. I also thought about Jack, the man Yuna loved. I hadn't had much contact with him in my past life, and my memory of him was vague. What was so special about him that Yuna was so intent on getting close to Ethan for his sake? Chapter 5. The next day, I went downstairs. Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Yuna were already sitting at the breakfast table. I entered the kitchen to get my own utensils, as in this house, I was the only one who had to do everything for myself. Even the butler, who had been with the Smith family for years, never seemed to respect me. As soon as I sat down, Mrs. Smith shot me a displeased glance before turning to Yuna with a loving smile. Yuna, this is your favorite. Try it. Mr. Smith also kept on reminding Yuna. You've lost so much weight recently. You need to take better care of yourself. No one at the table even spared a glance at me. Sometimes, I wondered why Jiang's parents had gone to all the trouble of bringing me back into this family if they only cared about Yuna and didn't even like me, their biological daughter. I silently finished my breakfast, not daring to reach for anything else. As I was about to leave, Yuna called out to me. Sister, my birthday party is in a few days. I want Ethan to be my date. Could you not compete with me? Yuna's tone was flawless, laced with just the right amount of grievance and a hint of pleading. In an instant, she cast herself as the victim, even though I hadn't said or done anything at all. Mrs. Smith slammed her hand on the table. Mia! Who do you think you are, trying to compete with Yuna? I took a deep breath. I'm not competing with her. You dare to talk back. Ethan is someone Yuna likes. You've been clinging to her man for so long, and now you dare to compete with her. Do you think I won't teach you a lesson? I met Mrs. Smith's gaze head on, refusing to back down. I'm not clinging to Ethan. I just happen to work at his company, so it's unavoidable that I'll have contact with him. Seeing that I was continuously contradicting her, Mrs. Smith looked even angrier. She stood up and walked towards me, her hand raised as though she intended to strike me. Enough! Mr. Smith shouted, and Mrs. Smith stopped in her tracks. You're a member of the Smith family. What's it look like for you to be working at someone else's company? Quit that job now. I looked at Mr. Smith's stern face, but inside, I felt nothing. There was no place for me in the Smith family, so how could I consider myself part of it? Mrs. Smith had always been against me working at NovaWave. If I quit, I would have no source of income. Even though I had no intention of leaving NovaWave right now, I refused to acknowledge Mr. Smith's authority. So, I ignored his words and turned to leave. As I reached the door, I could still hear Jiang's parents scolding me for being ungrateful. Yuna, on the other hand, was softly comforting them. Chapter 6. Mrs. Smith suggested that I quit my job, and after thinking about it, I realized that every day at the white company NovaWave, seeing Ethan's face, reminded me of my own foolishness. Moreover, if I didn't resign quickly, I wasn't sure whether Yuna would get her hands on White's confidential files and frame me. I hadn't opened a recruitment app in a long time, but instinctively, I searched for a job at Jack's company. It was just a sudden thought, but unexpectedly, Kin's company was actually hiring, and the position was for an executive secretary. By the time I walked into Jack's office, I was still in a bit of a daze. Had I really gotten the job? Jack wore gold-rimmed glasses, looking very elegant. When he noticed my presence, he looked up and took off his glasses, rubbing his temples. I felt a bit nervous as he studied me with narrowed eyes. Mia? The second daughter of the Smith family? What made you come here to interview for a secretary position? I composed myself and answered in a calm tone. Even the second daughter of the Smith family needs to make a living. Jack chuckled lightly and didn't ask any more questions. Have you completed the resignation process at your previous company? I nodded. When I put in my resignation, Ethan seemed even more eager for me to leave than I was. Since that's the case, let's start working, Mia. After spending a day working alongside Jack, I understood what it meant to be a workaholic. No wonder Ethan couldn't break Kin's company last time. Jack was capable, and perhaps working with him would allow me to get revenge on Ethan and Yuna faster. And Yuna had feelings for Jack. I knocked on Jack's office door, and he seemed a little surprised when he saw me. Miss Lin, what can I do for you? Looking into his eyes, I felt inexplicably nervous. Tomorrow is Yuna's birthday party. I was wondering if Mr. Kin might be interested in collaborating with me. Collaborate? Since I chose to interview at Kin's company, it wasn't just to find a new job. Getting close to Jack was my ultimate goal. I can help you deal with Du's company. Jack put his glasses back on and looked very serious. If I remember correctly, Miss Lin, you've been deeply in love with Ethan. What made you decide to help me deal with Du's company? I had anticipated this question and had prepared my answer in advance. I may have deep feelings for him, but he doesn't necessarily feel the same way about me. Now, all he sees is Yuna, so there's no reason for me to always consider him. Jack looked at me with interest. What do you need me to do? I clenched my fists. If Mr. Kin could bring down Du's company, it would be a huge help. But if Mr. Kin could also make things difficult for Yuna, I would be very grateful. Chapter 7. My conversation with Jack went unexpectedly smoothly. On the day of Yuna's birthday party, in the vast venue, Yuna was the center of attention, while I was just invisible. Ethan stood beside Yuna, and they truly looked like a perfect couple. Mr. and Mrs. Smith eagerly talked to Ethan, constantly introducing other people to him and Yuna. I sat alone in a corner, hoping for some peace, but someone wasn't going to let me have it. Ethan walked up to me, surprisingly smiling. "Mia, why are you sitting here all alone?" I didn't respond. I suspected Ethan had ulterior motives in approaching me. As expected, when he saw I wasn't interested in making small talk, his expression darkened. "Mia, now you're bold enough to give me the cold shoulder? Ethan, if you have something to say, just say it. If you stay here too long, Yuna might get upset." He sneered. "I heard you resigned and joined Anderson's company? No matter what you have to do, get those confidential files from Jack for me." I sneered inwardly. Ethan was truly shameless. Did he really think I would just do whatever he asked? Before I could speak, Yuna's voice interrupted. "Ethan, why did you come over here?" When she saw me, her eyes immediately welled up with tears. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize my sister was here. Did I disturb you?" I couldn't help but twitch my lips. Yuna really had a talent for acting. Ethan hurriedly embraced Yuna, looking concerned. "What are you saying? There's nothing between me and Mia. She's the one who's been clinging to me." Yuna squeezed Ethan's shirt, looking pitiful. "How can you say that about my sister?" Then she turned to me. "Mia, I know you like Ethan. I know I shouldn't be involved between you two, but I just can't let go of him." As she spoke, Yuna's tears flowed in a steady stream. The commotion we caused caught the attention of many, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith hurried over. Seeing Yuna clinging to Ethan in tears, while I stood there indifferent, their faces darkened. "Mia, what have you done to Yuna?" I frowned, looking at Jong Mother, who had immediately started accusing me. Though I was used to Jong Mother's favoritism, her blame still made me uncomfortable. Seeing me silent, Jong Mother grew angrier, while Ethan comforted Yuna, his hateful gaze fixed on me. "Mia, who do you think you are, making Yuna suffer?" With that, Ethan raised his hand to strike me. Just as I was about to dodge, a figure suddenly appeared in front of me. The person who stepped in firmly grasped Ethan's hand, preventing him from breaking free. Yuna, seeing the newcomer, was shocked, even forgetting to cry. Jack stepped forward and wrapped his arms protectively around me. "Who do you think you are, daring to lay a hand on my woman?" Chapter 8. I was a bit surprised by Jack's appearance. "What are you doing here?" Jack looked at me with a gentle expression. "If I didn't come, wouldn't that mean you'd just be bullied for nothing?" Mr. and Mrs. Smith looked displeased, and Ethan scanned me and Jack with a stern gaze. Only Yuna stared at me with intense hatred. "Mia, what's your relationship with Jack?" She tried to grab me, but Jack blocked her. "Miss Smith, I don't think you need an explanation about my relationship with Mia, do you?" Yuna's mood shifted so dramatically that even Ethan noticed something was off. "Yuna, you and Jack." Before he could finish, Yuna's expression changed, and she quickly clung to Ethan's arm. "My sister used to have only you in her heart. Suddenly seeing her with another man, I was just a bit curious," she explained. After hearing Yuna's explanation, Ethan didn't overthink it. Seeing Jack, Mr. and Mrs. Smith immediately shifted their attitude. "Mr. Kin, Yuna didn't tell us you'd be here today. We apologize for the oversight." Jack waved his hand dismissively. "I'm not here for Yuna but for Mia." Yuna's face drained of color. A few days ago, she had invited Jack to her birthday party, but he had declined without hesitation. That's why she had to find Ethan to accompany her. Jack lowered his gaze to me, and I stared at the gleam in his gold-rimmed glasses, trying to figure out his intentions. As Mia's boyfriend, it's only right for me to offer my birthday wishes to Miss Jong. Chapter 9. At this point, not only did the people present look stunned, but I was also at a loss for words. While I had hoped Jack would help me provoke Yuna, I hadn't expected him to drop a bombshell like this. Noticing Yuna's resentful glare, I sighed. I didn't know whether being close to Jack was a blessing or a curse. Ignoring the uncomfortable expressions around us, I took Jack's hand and led him away. I let go of his hand and looked at him seriously. It's just a collaboration. You don't have to go this far. Jack looked nonchalant. Didn't you want to get back at Yuna? You should know what she thinks of me. By claiming I'm your boyfriend, isn't that the best way to get under her skin? I took a deep breath. Today, I had vented some frustration, but I was worried about what other tricks Yuna might pull when we got back. Jack seemed to read my thoughts and chuckled. If you want to take them down, don't let fear hold you back. Jack's words struck a chord. He was clearly no ordinary person, and his insight gave me a wake-up call. In this second chance at life, my goal was to ensure that Yuna and Ethan would never recover. With the time nearing when Yuna would frame me, I realized I had to act faster. Otherwise, I might once again end up defeated. I exhaled slowly and looked at Jack. I understand. If there's ever anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to ask. In my past life, Yuna had sabotaged Nova Wave by leaking confidential documents, yet it hadn't caused lasting damage to Ethan. Now that I'd left the Nova Wave and had no easy access to him, even if I managed to obtain those documents, it still might not be enough to bring him down completely. As I wrestled with how to take on Ethan, he came looking for me. Chapter 10. Sitting across from Ethan, I took a sip of coffee, keeping silent and letting him grow restless. Finally, he couldn't hold back any longer. So, did you get the files from Jack? Do you have them? I set my coffee cup down, feigning confusion as I looked at him. When did I agree to help you? You! Ethan's face contorted in anger, but he quickly regained composure. He took my hand in his. Mia, you know that Jack and I have been enemies for years. You're in a position to get close to him. Don't you want to help me? If you help me, I'll do anything you ask. Initially, I planned to pull my hand away, but an idea suddenly crossed my mind. And if I ask you to stop seeing Yuna from now on? For a moment, Ethan looked completely taken aback. Seizing the moment, I withdrew my hand, feigning disappointment. If that's too much to ask, then just forget it. I made as if to stand, but Ethan quickly grabbed my arm. All right. I'll do it. I smiled at him, though inside, I felt only cold indifference. If Yuna wanted to use her connection with Ethan to curry favor with Jack, then I would make sure she ended up with nothing. After parting ways with Ethan, I went straight to Jack and relayed everything Ethan had said to me. Jack was quiet for a moment, then handed me a folder. If he wants it, let him have it. I opened the folder and was surprised at what I found. It was a project Jack had been working on recently. Just give it to him? Jack's eyes darkened slightly. It's a minor project. If it earns his trust, then it's worth it. Chapter 11. I didn't rush to give the file to Ethan, waiting a few days before meeting him. Ethan was excited to see me. Did you get it? I handed him the file. Jack doesn't fully trust me yet. I can't get more confidential files, but this project plan should help. Ethan looked pleased but then dissatisfied. Isn't Jack your boyfriend? Why doesn't he trust you? Jack knows about my past feelings for you, so... Ethan, realizing my implied sadness, quickly reassured me. Mia, I'm sorry you have to stay with Jack. Once you get the files to bring him down, you won't have to suffer anymore. Then we can be together. I pretended to be happy. Really? You'll be with me? Ethan looked serious. Of course. Mia, I know how you feel about me. I won't let you down. I hesitated. What about Yuna? What will you do about her? Yuna is just a plaything. My heart is only for you. Turning off the recording on my phone, I felt disgusted by Ethan's words. Even someone he liked, he could discard for his own benefit. Jack's voice interrupted my thoughts. Are you going to give this recording to Yuna? I thought for a moment. Yes, but not now. I wanted Yuna to learn the most devastating news at her lowest point. Chapter 12. After joining Kin Corporation, I moved out of the Zhang house. Today, as I returned home, I was blocked by Mrs. Smith and Yuna. I stopped Yuna from slapping me. Yuna, what are you doing? Yuna, no longer pretending to be a delicate flower, cursed at me. Mia, who do you think you are, seducing Jack? You better stay away from him, or I'll make you pay. I was indifferent to her threats. Yuna, you really like taking other people's men. Didn't you say you couldn't let go of Ethan? Why are you so concerned about Jack? Yuna's face changed. My business is none of your concern. Funny, that's what I wanted to say to you. My business is none of your concern, and who I date is even less your concern. I turned to go upstairs, but Mrs. Smith blocked me. Mia, you and Jack aren't suitable. You should break up with him. I looked at her coldly. You've never cared about me. Why do you care now? In my past life, I had a miserable time in the Zhang house. After being framed and imprisoned, Mr. and Mrs. Smith never visited me, even publicly severing ties with me. In this second chance, I didn't plan to harm them, but I had no affection left for them either. After moving out, I considered myself no longer part of the Smith family. Today, I only returned to get my things. Mrs. Smith didn't expect my attitude and was momentarily speechless. Chapter 13. After leaving the Zhang house, I received a message from Ethan. When I met him, he was eager. Any news from Jack? I thought for a moment before speaking. He's preparing a bid for a piece of land with great potential. The last project plan I gave Ethan had made him some money. Hearing this, he was eager. Get me the bid proposal. I looked troubled and sighed. Ethan immediately asked. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Ethan, I went home today, but Yuna and my parents don't welcome me. If Jack finds out I'm helping you, I'll have nowhere to go. Ethan put his arm around my shoulder. You have me. How could you have nowhere to go? But you have Yuna. She always threatens me to stay away from you. Ethan was surprised. Yuna threatened you? Ethan, you don't know. Although I'm their biological daughter, Yuna has been with them longer. They like her more. I have no place in the Smith family and have suffered countless grievances. I pretended to be sad, not seeking Ethan's pity, but to change his view of Yuna. If he chose to abandon Yuna to get more information from me, it would be a good outcome. Chapter 14. The next day at work, Jack called me into his office. He handed me a file, and I saw it was an important document from Nova Wave. Did Yuna bring this? Jack nodded. I asked. What are you going to do? Jack didn't seem to care about the file. I don't plan to do anything. Yuna approached Ethan on her own. I didn't ask her to. Nova Wave's files are useless to me. I was surprised, remembering that in my past life, there was no trace of Kin Corporation behind the leak of Nova Wave's secrets. Even the phone call I overheard from Yuna to Jack was one-sided. Yuna probably leaked the files herself to please Jack. I looked at Jack and chuckled. It seems I misunderstood you. Jack took off his glasses and leaned closer. Aren't I your boyfriend? Why are you still calling me Mr. Kin? I quickly stepped back. Mr. Kin, please don't joke with me. I have work to do. I'll go now. After leaving, I took several deep breaths to calm down. When I met Ethan again, he treated me differently. Instead of immediately asking about Kin Corporation, he ordered some of my favorite dishes and chatted with me. I had no patience for his games and handed him a file and a USB drive. Everything you need is here. Chapter 15. The so-called bid proposal was a trap. If Ethan won the bid, it would only bring him trouble. Sitting in Jack's office, I relaxed after hearing Ethan had won the bid. Yuna had also leaked Nova Wave's confidential files, leaving Ethan overwhelmed. I had one final gift for Yuna and Ethan. Do you need my help? Jack's voice brought me back to reality. I shook my head. Some things I need to do myself. Jack didn't press further and drove me to Nova Wave. Go ahead. I'll wait for you. I didn't refuse his kindness and went to Ethan's office. Yuna was there comforting Ethan after he had just lost his temper. Seeing me, Yuna accused me. Sister, I know you're with Jack now, but you can't steal Nova Wave's files for him. What do you take Ethan for? I calmly faced her accusations, finding the scene eerily similar to my past life. Yuna, I left Nova Wave. How could I steal Ethan's files? Yuna's face stiffened. Before she could speak, I played a recording. It was the conversation I had recorded of her revealing her true intentions to Jack. Then I presented evidence proving Yuna had stolen the files and bribed the media to leak them. Ethan and Yuna's faces changed. I continued. Ethan, you liked Yuna so much. Did you ever think the sweet girl you adored had another man in her heart? From the beginning, Yuna only liked Jack. You were just a tool to please him. Yuna grabbed Ethan's arm, desperately explaining. Ethan, listen to me. This is all fake. Mia is framing me. Ethan pushed her away and slapped her hard. You dared to scheme against me. How dare you? Watching their drama unfold, I felt nothing. The suffering I endured in my past life, I would repay in full. Yuna, slapped by Ethan, suddenly calmed down. She glared at me with hatred. So what if you have this evidence? Ethan only had eyes for me, and you were nothing. It must have hurt to see the man you loved with another woman. Mia, you gained nothing. What right do you have to gloat? You're just my defeated opponent. I laughed. Do you think Ethan's feelings for you are that deep? I played another recording, where Ethan called Yuna a plaything. Yuna, you're just a clown. My gift to Ethan and Yuna delivered, I reminded Ethan before leaving. Ethan, don't be so foolish and arrogant in the future. Take a good look at that bid proposal. You'll find a surprise. With Ethan already struggling with the leaked secrets, the trouble from the bid proposal would be the final blow. And that day would come soon. Chapter 16. When I reached the ground floor, Jack was waiting by his car. For some reason, I felt an urgency to reach him. But when I stood before him, I didn't know what to say. Before I could speak, Yuna's voice called out. Her face was swollen, her hair disheveled, looking utterly pathetic. Yuna seemed to want to say something to me but stopped upon seeing Jack. Yansheng, why are you here? Jack frowned. Miss Zhang, we're not familiar. Please don't call me that. Yuna's face contorted. Yansheng, do you really have no feelings for me? Before Jack could respond, I stepped in front of him. Yuna, he's my boyfriend. Why should he have feelings for you? With that, I pulled Jack into the car. As he was about to start the car, I noticed Yuna's longing gaze at him. I suddenly leaned in and kissed Jack on the corner of his lips. Without looking at his reaction, I addressed the shocked Yuna. It must hurt to see the man you love with another woman, right? With that, I rolled up the window, hearing a soft laugh beside me. Miss Lin seemed satisfied. I felt nervous, not daring to look at Jack. He leaned closer. Am I a good tool? I felt uneasy. Mr. Qin, I apologize for my earlier behavior. Jack scoffed and moved away. The drive was silent, and he didn't speak even when I got out of the car. I felt lost. This was the first time Jack had been so cold to me. As he was about to drive away, I quickly stopped him and got back in the car. Jack looked annoyed. What are you doing? Do you know how dangerous this is? Seeing his concern, I hesitated no longer. I leaned in and kissed him again. I wasn't just using you to provoke Yuna. What I said to her was true. Jack was stunned. Which part? I took a deep breath, my voice trembling. My boyfriend, why should he have feelings for her? Jack hugged me tightly. Mia, I like you. Can you give me a chance to be your real boyfriend? I hugged him back. Jack, I like you too. Not to use you, but truly like you. This second chance at life wasn't just for revenge. It was also to meet Jack, the man worthy of my lifelong trust.